Okay, so this is going to be the recording for the week 2 GoToMeeting. And basically what we're going to do is just kind of look at the pulleys UVs, kind of talk about what it is, and then we'll start answering some of the questions as we look at that. Now I'm not going to go into the same lighting project. I'm just going to kind of import the pulley OBJ file into like a completely separate scene, just so we can kind of work on that independently. And then later on when we're done UVing it, or whenever you're done, obviously you can just transfer that back to the same lighting project you were doing previously. But let's find the file. Oops, wrong folder. Okay, there it is. So one thing that's a little bit different here, if we kind of compare some of the UV tools back to something you've done maybe previously, and I'm not sure, Megan, like the last time you were UVing, were you even in 2017 or were you doing 2016 at that point? Okay. And I know some of the earlier versions of 17, they didn't really update the UV editor. So I don't know if yours even looked like this or if you were still seeing kind of the older version that was the way it used to be like in 2016 and earlier. So I believe they changed this whole UV setup sometime around update 2 or 3. I want to say it might have been update 3 in 2017. But either way, whether you've kind of seen this before or you haven't, it's way better than it used to be. It's a lot more organized. But for anyone that maybe hasn't used the new UV editor, it is quite a bit different, just trying to find all the different buttons and tools that we're kind of used to. So let me kind of bring up my reference first, like my example, just so you can kind of see that. And maybe we'll at least figure out what the areas were that you're not sure about. And then we'll probably be able to go in there and start mapping some of that out. So looking at this guy, what part were you kind of wondering about that you're not really sure like what it is?
Okay, so there's two parts. The two down in the bottom left corner where it gets to that circular
Yep.
with all the lines. That one, and then the on the upper right hand getting that kind of shape. Because what I did was I was unfolding them,
Yeah.
and they looked decent, and then I didn't know how you managed to get all those lines like that.
Okay. So I know you obviously know what those pieces are. Now, the ones in the bottom left, do you know what part of the geometry that is?
It's from the bigger piece on
Yeah,
the inside.
exactly. Okay, so we'll kind of look at this guy first, and then I'll kind of maybe come back to this one, and we'll see what maybe was the issue. Did you use the unfold tool on this section?
I was playing around with basically all the options that they gave you to
Yeah.
try to find the best one because I could get like the long part of it just fine. It just comes to when it gets to the indent where there's more of the
Yeah.
movement. I don't know how to accurately say that, but
Yeah.
that's what I was having
Right.
trouble with.
It's like that threading right there, and then there's another little indent right there. And I'm sure if you're looking at like at those areas with the checker pattern, they probably looked like they were stretching, like back inside of Maya.
Yeah.
Yeah, in mine, even though I know you can't see it because you can't see the model, with a checker pattern on it. But if I viewed this one in Maya, mine would also stretch a little bit. So there actually is a little stretching in mine, but it's so minor, and that's kind of like a pretty hidden area that I wasn't really too concerned about it. But we'll try tackling that guy and just see what happens when we UV it. So I'll just kind of do a demo, and maybe we'll kind of start with those pieces, and then we'll see if you have any other questions, and then we'll kind of go from there. But so I've got this guy. I imported it. This is starting off as a automatic map, and even if you UV'd the one in the lighting project, which doesn't have any UVs, it really doesn't matter either way. Whether it's been UV'd, there's no UVs. We know we're going to start from scratch anyway. So I always do the same thing when I want to start over, which is basically just click on the model, go to create, and then we're going to do camera based. So as soon as I do a camera based planar map, okay, you can see that it basically looks exactly like what we're seeing in the perspective view. So we're going to go to our object, and we'll kind of click on that guy. We'll do a separate, move that up. Okay, and this is one of the pieces you were kind of concerned about. So what I ended up doing here is I just kind of saw, all right, it's a cylindrical shape. And while we do have these kind of flat caps on the top, and I know these would look like something maybe we would do like a Y planar map on, I wasn't really too concerned about even doing that, just because when it's all put back together, you're never going to see that part anyway. So we have some students that do end up cutting, like they'll try running an edge loop like all the way along the border to separate that, just so they can do a Y planar map. If you want to do that, that's totally fine. It's not really going to make or break anything either way. So what I'm going to do is just skip that altogether and just try doing a cylindrical map. So if I click on it, we're going to do cylindrical. Okay, you can see we've got this little layout right here. And I'm going to immediately turn on the checker pattern. And my checker is extremely obnoxious looking, bright pink. That could not have been any worse. Oh, I like how this finally updated. I actually changed this 2 days ago, and it wasn't working. And I bet it won't go back. Oh, it works. Amazing. I had an issue when I did this for my campus class. I don't know if you guys have realized this or not, but if you shift left click on that little checker button, you can change like how many checkers you want to see, you know, inside of it. I can make them bigger, smaller. You can change colors. There's a lot of different things you can do to it. But I was trying to do this for my campus students, and I kept changing the color, and like nothing was updating. But it looks like it finally works. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Now, I do have it kind of turned on, but obviously, I mean, you have this thing visible in the UV editor. I mean, this is just terrible. Like, you can't see anything. So usually what I do is when I turn this on, I hit the little button next to it to make sure it doesn't show up as an image in here. However, you can still see it will show up on whatever you're selecting in the viewer. So if I ended up like going to a different model, it will still show the UVs as long as I'm selecting it until I don't select it or if I just turn that off. So that's kind of how I prefer to use that. Now really the main goal here is just getting those to be nice and square, which is going to be pretty easy. I got to take this strip. I can just kind of scale it down a little bit. I can make it wider if I wanted to. I mean, you can always scale it up. The scale of this guy like doesn't really matter right now. So whether it's small or big is completely irrelevant at this point. The only thing you're doing is trying to get the proportions of this so it looks like it's making squares. So it's really just getting the width and height balanced. So this needs to be scaled out to right about there. Now you can tell like that does look pretty good. Now the issue we're running into is back here on the side. Sometimes what I'll do is like with the checker pattern, it's not always easy to see if you have stretching. So for example, like right here, this really doesn't look that bad, right? Just because it looks like it's just a bunch of white and black checkers. But if you move it back and forth, watch the side of the notch. So I'll just like wiggle it, and you can see how the checkers almost like popping. I'm barely moving this thing, you know, fractions of a unit, and you can tell it's like jumping back and forth erratically. That is stretching. Now, if I go over here where I can see text, because part of my little checker pattern will show me like, you know, numbers and letters, that will make it a little easier to see. And you can see that U is just, you know, stretching right down the side. So we do have stretching issues. So here, you know, really we're ending up at the point where I got to figure out how to fix that. So there's a couple ways to do it. I could cut it up and do like an unfold or a relax or something like that separately on like the different strips. Because over here in the reference, you can see how I kind of cut mine up into 4 sections. The only reason I did that is just because I knew if I cut it up into smaller pieces, I'd be able to scale that up a lot larger. And if I had it connected as one long strip, I mean, this thing would be really, really tiny. just to fit into 0 to 1 space. So I know cutting things up adds texture seams. It sounds like something you wouldn't want to do, but in this case, it's better because we're able to scale it up. So there is a kind of a nice little benefit to doing that. But either way, whether I cut it first or unfold it, I think it might be easier to probably do the unfold before we cut it. So I'm just kind of doing everything with one click. But let's see what happens when we do this. So if I maybe do all the UVs right here, okay, all of them. And I guess when you did the unfold, were you doing it through the smooth tool? This is probably where you learned it previously. Like if you click on it and then it brings up that little unfold slider. Because I know they used to teach it. I don't know if that.
I went through where it says unfold on the right side.
Okay, you did.
But I did it in pieces and then I was sewing them together versus doing an entire sling.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, that's totally fine too. So I just want to kind of bring this up because I don't know if they taught you this way, but this is another way to do unfold. This is like the older method they used to have in like 2016 and earlier. And so a lot of students are used to going to the smooth UV tool. This one's okay, but this is not really the same thing as that unfold button. I think this is like an older tool, and it doesn't even really do the same thing. This one's kind of stupid, honestly, because you have to like click on it and drag, and it's not bad. It kind of works, but actually that kind of looks okay. Wow, that usually never happens. Well, it got a little weird there. I'm actually kind of surprised this even looks as good as it does right now. Usually when we use the older unfold with that relax tool, it just ends up distorting things too much. So I really prefer this guy, which it sounds like you've already been doing. Now, if we do want to use this one and not the other guy, the first thing you want to check is before you hit the button, if you shift left click on it, when the tool options pop up at the top, look to see if this is even showing up at all on the top, where it says Unfold 3D or Legacy. And Legacy just means this is, if you pick this, you're doing like the older version of the Unfold tool. And it still might work, it's just an older tool. This is the new one, which theoretically means it should be better. And I typically prefer this one. But if you don't see this as an option at all, that means you are using Legacy and the plugin for Unfold 3D must not be enabled. So to turn that on, just in case, it's actually going to be kind of good because I'm recording this, but just in case anyone runs into this, if you do not see that option at all, you're going to go to your plugin manager, and then just, it's all alphabetical, but just kind of scroll down this huge list, and eventually you're going to get to the letter U, and you can see there's a little checkbox for Unfold 3D. And you just turn it on, and then the next time you shift left click on it, you should see that's an option. But either way, make sure that's set. Now let me just see what happens if I do the unfold. So we'll go to UV, just kind of double click anywhere just so it selects everything. Hit unfold, and let's see what happens. Now it's not bad. I mean, if you actually look at the checkers, I know they're kind of slanted, which is not that big deal. That's just because it's rotated. But aside from like the weird rotation thing, it actually looks pretty good in the viewer. I'd say maybe like the main issue with this thing is that it does seem a little weird that it kind of bent like that. You know, it'd be nice if it was really nice and straight. Now this actually is fixable, even though it looks bent. And I talk about this in one of the scraper videos for the UVs, but if we wanted to fix this thing in the scraper videos, I was talking about this tool called the lattice. And I could use the lattice to probably fix it. So let's say we wanted to use this and we hit unfold, we like it, but I just wish it was a little straighter. If I double click on all the UVs, go to tools, we're going to go to lattice, and it brings up these little kind of control buttons all around it. These are lattice points. And I can basically just shift click on the end points and to select them and then bend it down and try to nudge it back into position. This one's a little weird because it's not really bent in the center. And I can tell as I start bending it, it's sort of turning into like an S. So I'm probably not, I'm not really too crazy about the lattice on this guy, but in a pinch, this might still work. But let me back up. So at this point right here, like before I did the lattice, like right here, this is probably still okay, and I could probably cut it. And even though they are kind of bent, you could probably texture this in Photoshop and it'd be totally fine. But let's try the way I did it in my project. Because when I did it, I didn't do the unfold tool because I did this before this was working. Here's how I did it. I click on it. We're going to do cylindrical. Whoops, sorry, I have to go to face mode to do that. Faces, cylindrical. We just scale that real fast. Okay, right about there. So I'm kind of right before I want to hit that button again. This time, I'm going to do the relax. So if I double click, relax is under the same tool I went to before, where I was telling you probably where you don't want to use the unfold. But the smooth tool has two different tools built into it. It has the older unfold tool, which we're not going to use, but below that, there's a relax tool. This one still works pretty well. The relax tool is basically just like an averaging, almost like a smoothing tool, like where it just kind of softens the UVs and kind of blends them together. It's really good like when you do this on organic characters, if you just want to like kind of blur some stretching and kind of soften things. But if I basically click on relax and drag a little bit, I'm just going to watch the viewer. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it. I don't need to go too far, but you can kind of see like the side of that notch that I'm kind of revealing. Like you can't see it, and then there's this face like right there. That's the side. So like right around there looks pretty good. And that is like exactly how I did mine. Is just a relax, didn't even use the unfold at all, so it's nice and straight. And I think after that is when I decided to cut it up. And there's a trick if you want to break it up into even sections. We just double click on the UVs for the shell, hit W, and when you hit W, you know how when you have a bunch of things selected, anytime you use like W or E or R for like translate, rotate, scale, it always kind of puts that pivot point, like that controller in the center of your selection. I like to use that as a guide where when I select all the UVs, I know this line right here is the middle. So if I line that up with the grid and kind of zoom in here, like put it right there, I know that the edges in here, like any of these guys, that's all right about like at the halfway point. So I could basically double click, find a loop that works. Like that one seems to select pretty easily. I can shift right click to bring up cut. Or if you prefer, you can go to the cut section, just hit cut. But I'm using a lot of the shortcuts. So shift right click. You can see a bunch of these guys we might want to use. And that is now cut. So if I go to a shell and kind of click on it, you can see we now have two very nice even sections. And I'd basically repeat that again to get that broken into 4 sections. So shift click on both shells. Now that they're kind of on top of each other, move it over, get that right on the little grid line there, right there. And now I know that if I go to edge mode, that edge and this one are really close to the halfway point. So shift right click, cut. And now if I go back to shell, I can take both these guys, stack them, and you can tell they look really, really nice and clean. And in mine, I think I rotated them vertical, so they're kind of standing upright, but this is basically what I did. The only reason mine does look a little different, because you can tell they're not really the same, because I have these little curved details right there. That isn't anything to do with the way I UV'd it. That's just simply a difference between the 1 or the 3 key. Because as soon as I hit 3 and smooth it, like it actually does look exactly like what we had in the example. So there's that. Now, I think when the process of me relaxing it, some of them do look a little more like a rectangle. So, if that kind of bugs me, maybe now that I've relaxed it, I could just go back there and kind of scale this a little bit. It's not going to be perfect, but even somewhere around here is honestly good enough. I'll go back to 1 now that I'm done. Yep, so there's that. Let's see. I know you also were concerned about this section here, kind of on the inside. This one's really easy. The hard part's just kind of selecting it. Let me actually turn that checker off right now because that thing's pretty terrible looking. All right, so I want to do a cylindrical map on the whole inside here. Super easy. So I want to cut the edges first because I want to remove this shell so it's a lot easier to select because you're not going to want to go in here and like hand select this. It's going to be terrible. It's going to take forever too, like row selection. It's just not really going to work. And I've seen students that will try to select this by hand, like in the lab. It's painful. Like it takes them like 40 minutes. They still don't select it right, and they just start screaming. So we're going to cut the edges first. So I'm going to go in, zoom in right here. You can see I got a bevel. Now, how do I know which edge to cut? If I hit 3 key, if you look at the way the edges move when you subdivide it with 3, you'll notice that the middle edge, this is really the corner. That's the one I want to cut, not one of these guys. So I definitely want the middle. We're going to double click. The loop stops, shift. So I'm just going to continue that edge loop all the way around the top. Okay, we'll go over here and right there, shift, and you can see that looks like a full loop. I can kind of see it's lighting up right there. So shift right click, cut. Okay, let's do the bottom. Same thing, middle edge loop. It's gonna be very exciting. You're gonna be just watching me shift click through the whole model. So just give me a couple seconds here to do that. Okay, that looks good. Shift right click in the UV editor, cut. Now, just to kind of verify it worked, I'm going to go right click, UV shell. I can see those are highlighting as different pieces, so I know it worked, meaning this can be moved away from the rest of that other UV shell now that I've cut it the right way. And now if I want to select all the faces, I just simply marquee drag over that, and I can now cylindrical map it way, way faster. And I know that probably seems kind of like very obvious, like as I'm doing it, but like that sort of concept of like cutting something to separate the shell just so you can select it faster is going to make a world of difference when you start UVing things. And I use this technique on almost every single model I do. And then there are going to be cases where it would be faster to select it by hand in the viewer, especially if you're doing like a game character or like a game asset where there's only, a few faces. Yeah, just select them, be done with it. But for something as complex as this, where there's so many just edge loops and faces and vertices, merging together, it is going to be a lot faster doing it that way. But once you kind of have it selected, we can go over to cylindrical because obviously it is a cylinder. Hit it, and before I really do anything, if I kind of back up the camera, you can see because I haven't clicked anywhere yet. When you hit the cylindrical button, I can see the maps laid out, and there's this weird looking control and tool in the viewer. So this is your control to rotate the cylindrical primitive, just in case, maybe your cylindrical map should be on its side. Like if this was a pipe laying sideways on the ground, I'd have to rotate it. But I don't have to really do that. My big issue is if I just look at the UV shell, if you look on the edge here, I just don't really like this. Like that looks kind of messy. And it's only because there's a seam running through one of these areas. Now, one kind of annoying thing, and I think this was a mistake, is in some of the earlier versions of 2017, all the versions of 2017, the texture border button doesn't always show up in the viewer. But let me see if it's over here. Is this going to show up today? It is not. So I'm turning this thing bold, and you can see it is lighting up in the UV editor, but I have no idea where that is in the viewer. It's possible to still turn that on. This is a mistake. They fixed it in 2018. So if you guys are in 2018, if you hit that button, it'll probably just work. But if you don't see the texture border, if you go to Windows, Modeling, not Windows, Display, Polygons, and go down to Texture Border Edges, if you turn that on, that should have enabled it somewhere. I think that's it right there. You can barely see it. There's like a thicker edge right there. And just in case you do want to use that, and maybe the edge is so thin you still can't really identify it. If you go to edge width, like right below where I just clicked, I can set the width to whatever I want. You can see as I bring that up, it makes that texture border a lot thicker. And it does make it kind of easier to sort of see where you may have cut something. So maybe I'll just leave that up to like 4 or so. Yeah, you definitely can see that now. But let me kind of go back to that cylindrical map real quick. I have to redo that again because I lost my tool. So double click, cylindrical. All right. So the tool's up, and I want to rotate it to fix that seam. And what I kind of want to do is just try to move it so I get that kind of nice and flush down that edge pretty close to the corner. I think it'd just make a lot more sense to try to hide that near the corner of that guy than like in the middle of this or out in the open cutting through here. So to rotate it, if you click on the little red line on the outside of the tool and just kind of click and drag, you can see I'm spinning it. You can see in the background, because I have that border turned on, I'm watching it just kind of move around on the object. And again, there's not really like any super crazy technique to this. I mean, you just kind of look at it. Does this seem pretty good? Yeah, I'm happy with that. I could probably move it over just a little bit to one more edge. See if I can do that. I'm kind of watching the UVs in here just to make sure it's nice and even. That looks pretty good. Yep. Looks decent. I like that. So that guy is now all set. Now let me get the checker thing working here now that I've rotated it, because these are not square. So double click on the face or the UVs, just kind of scale it until those look nice and square. Oops. And then we'll talk about the stretching issue we were going into before. All right. That's almost there. Yeah, that looks good. Those are nice and square. So this is kind of where I think a lot of people kind of panic a little bit, is they'll notice that when they do this, it really looks bad through here. So we do have a lot of stretching. Now, is this going to be a big deal? Honestly, no. We've had numerous students that leave it exactly like this, texture it, and when you get back in Maya, you would still never know there was ever an issue here at all. The only reason it looks bad is because you have to kind of remember that you're viewing this with a checker pattern. Like, this is one of the most extreme ways to ever look at a texture. When you end up just putting like this very generic rust on it, even this stuff right here is still going to look fine with a rust texture. And mine looks like this. My example has this exact same problem. Now, are there ways to fix it? Yes, absolutely. If you wanted to really fix it, what you'd have to do is either do it manually by cutting another edge on this side to separate that whole threaded piece, do a cylindrical map on just this section separately, just like you would do on the other threaded part. So you're basically separating them both, cylindrical mapping them both separately. Once they're cylindrical mapped, then you can start piecing it all back together, and it will probably look okay. So that's one alternative. Now, the other way to fix it, which I do quite a bit, is I just like to see what the unfold tool is going to do. Because sometimes the unfold tool actually works, and you get a good result. And if we don't like it, we just hit undo. So let's compare the result here. And I'll let you guys tell me which one you like. So here's what we're getting with just a cylindrical map. Nice and even and straight, little stretching. Here's that with the unfold. Now, I know in the UV editor, this looks worse, right? It's all weird and crooked. Like, that doesn't feel right. But if you look at what's happening in Maya, this looks better. This might be upside down. I'm not too sure about that. Is that upside down? It is. I have no clue why that happened. So it's also been flipped. That's not a big deal. But this is technically what it should probably look like. So it's kind of weird because I know this looks messier, but as far as like the stretching goes, this is definitely better. And we've had people do it this way, and I know it might bother you, but this is probably a better answer for the inside. You still have to cut it up, and try to stack them, and you'd be totally fine. And again, don't worry about this not being exactly like mine. This is still a very, very good result at the end of the day. So which one do you guys kind of prefer? The unfolded way or the sort of straighter, just cylindrical map? Yeah, most people do prefer that one, especially if any of you guys have like OCD issues where it's like you need things structured a certain way, like nice even lines, things stacking and scaled, a certain way. I totally get it. I also prefer the first one, but this is still totally fine as well. So does that kind of answer your question, Megan, about this that piece? Cool. So you can see there are multiple ways to do this. Oh, hey, Lucas. Just noticed you've joined us. All right. Do you guys have any other concerns about the pulley? I know that the top is probably the other section people get a little uneasy about. It is in one of the videos because I have that UV playlist, and I do kind of explain this section in it, but I can show you it real quick if you guys want. And after that, maybe what we'll do is to kind of talk about some Photoshop if you guys want. All right, let's do it. We're on a roll. All right, let's turn that checker off because that looks terrible. Scale that out a little bit. So let's say we want to UV the top part of the pulley. Now, something I mentioned in one of the videos when you guys start watching the kind of individual recordings of my UV playlist, you're going to see me bring this part up in the video, and I talk about how we do not want to break this into too many pieces. Because what happens is if you guys just kind of go off your instincts and maybe the way you've UV'd stuff before, when people see this part, they immediately think that, all right, so that is a flat cap. That's obviously a wide planar map. So this looks like a cylindrical map. This section's a wide planar map. So they're not really wrong thinking about it that way. Like that's right. Like this is planar, that is cylindrical, but you have to kind of think about what that means if you do it that way. Because if you start breaking this up every time we have a bevel and it kind of bends 90 degrees, how many different shells are you going to end up with by the time you get through the whole model from top to bottom? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different shells total. And every time you do a planar map, you're going to get a circular ring, right? Because you're basically planar mapping it from Y. Every time you do a cylindrical map, like on the side pieces, you're going to get this really weird strip, kind of like what we're doing over here. And then somehow later on, when you're done with all these little circles and strips, you have to find out, how do you even organize them in 0 to 1 space in any meaningful way? And straight lines and circles do not play well together. And so your 0 to 1 space is going to look terrible because you're having to scale everything down so small just to cram all these really awkward shapes together to fit. Hopefully that kind of makes sense the way I'm explaining that. Now, how do we get around that problem? So the solution to this is we definitely want to try to keep these connected. So we don't have to break it up that much. So what I'm going to do is keep this all the way to that bottom corner right there connected, like right before it begins to fold underneath. So since I've already cut that edge earlier, let me just go to the outside. We'll zoom in, right click. I'm going to double click on that edge right there. So that's the middle edge loop. I don't think that even, oh, there we go. Let's try that again. There we go. Shift right click, cut, or again, hit the cut tool over there. And this should be its own piece. So if we right click, go to shell, yep, it worked. We're gonna move that over. So now I can just very easily select that, which I've already got. And we're gonna start off by doing a Y planar map. Now, one thing kind of interesting here about this new tool set with 2017 and 2018 is that when you go into the create area with the planar map, if you kind of let your mouse sit over that, you'll see the little the tooltip pop up. And a lot of people don't read it, but if you actually look at what it's telling you, there's a bunch of shortcuts here, which are kind of interesting. So it says if you do a left mouse button, middle mouse button, and right mouse button, depending on which one of those buttons you use when you click on that tool, it will actually do different planar maps. So either what we have it set to by default, Y, or Z. Now, by default, right now, mine looks to be set to Y. One thing we do want to make sure that we keep on is this guy. And I believe I brought this up in some of the videos for the scraper previously. Do you guys remember what this was doing and kind of the issue with it? Because if you haven't really changed that before, because this is usually off by default, this is very bad if it's off, at least for what we're doing. This is that thing where if you have it off, it will always try to take whatever you UV'd and stretch it to fill 0 to 1 space, meaning that this strip, if I had something like that with the cylindrical map, it would actually try to jam that strip into this square, or sorry, this square, which obviously means it's going to be really squashed, and you don't want to do that. Like, I just want it to look like the right size right from the beginning. So if you have that on, it will not try to squash the UVs to fit 0 to 1 space. I prefer that. Like, let me scale it later. I'll do it myself. But we'll put it to Y, hit project, and you can see immediately we've got our Y planar map. Let's turn on the checker button. What do we get? Pretty good looking result, right? The flat parts look amazing, but the issue we sort of knew we were going to run into here is the side. So I want to show you guys 2 ways to do this. There is the manual way, which is still really good to know, and then there is the easy button, which everyone usually prefers. Now let me show you the easy button first. So the easy way is if you just double click, go to unfold, hit the button, and see what happens. I'm just kind of going back and forth. That looks pretty good, right? You can kind of see, like, by doing that, like, that looks really good. We hit 3. I'm pretty happy with that. So the unfold, like, especially the newer one, is going to do a really nice job on this thing. So this is great for this particular pulley. But there are going to be plenty of cases where you're going to do the unfold. Let me see if the legacy one will break. Put it back to legacy. Please. I want it to actually destroy this. This is going to be terrible. There we go. That, I love what it did to the rest of the model, by the way. Brilliant. So the old legacy one, you can tell it worked. You guys already see the issue. It's not that bad, but see how it's kind of like almost egg-like looking, where it's sort of, this whole side is like kicked out all weird. Now again, like, is it a huge deal? Nah, no, maybe not. It could be kind of annoying because if you left it this way and you go into Photoshop, eventually when you use the reference images, which are of the actual pulley, like I'm going to give you the photos of this guy, you'll probably notice that because your UVs are distorted a little bit, you're now distorting the texture just to force it to line up. So kind of annoying. But the reason I'm kind of showing you that, let me actually back up for that. We did that. I'm showing you that because sometimes Unfold will not do what you expect. And that's totally fine. The new one works great, but let's just pretend it didn't work, okay? So how do I do this manually just in case the tool doesn't do what you're expecting? Here's the trick. And this is the way I used to teach it in my earlier classes and what I do in the video. What you're going to do is if you know where the stretching is occurring, and I can see it's occurring on the side, you're going to basically try to get a selection of all the UVs or edges below where it's stretching. So if this is stretching right here, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to edge mode, click on that edge right there. Okay. Actually, let me go to 1, so I'm not in 3 mode. I'm actually going to do this edge, the one above it. And we're going to go all the way to the outside. And hopefully you guys have seen this before, where if you hold shift and double click on another edge farther down, it kind of makes that little edge loop connection. You probably had that shown to you in some modeling class, I would imagine. If you haven't seen it, surprise, that's here. So basically you shift click on another edge, it kind of makes the little connection point between them. And this is giving me the edges below it. Now what I also want to do is get all those edges around the model. And for some reason this one is just overlooked a lot, and I don't know why students haven't seen it yet. But check this out, it's pretty cool. If you shift right click, oh sorry, not shift right click, command right click in the viewer, you'll see all these little options pop up. And this is also how you can do an edge loop if you didn't want to double click. But look in the bottom left corner where it says edge ring utilities. I don't know if you guys have ever done an edge ring before. If you haven't, this is going to probably blow your mind. If you command right click, go to edge ring utilities, and then pick to edge ring, watch what happens with my selection. That's an edge ring. Edge ring is basically parallel edges. So because it's the same edge flow around that whole cylinder, it'll automatically select all those neighboring edges. Yeah. I know. I'm sure this is one of those moments where it's like, if I had only known that when I was doing like prop modeling or doing environments, some months ago. That thing is like a game changer for me. And that didn't exist in Maya back when I started doing this. And I can't remember what year they added it. I think it was probably like 4 or 5 years ago. But that thing's amazing. It's almost like just something so standard, like an edge loop, that you just kind of need to know it, just so you can sort of navigate through selections a lot faster. Because this need to do that pops up all the time when you're modeling something. So why do we do that? Like, why did I just spend all that time selecting those edges? This is why I'm doing it. Because remember, I'm trying to fix the stretching. Watch this magic. This looks so weird when you see it. And you'll understand why we're doing this. If you hit R in the UV editor to scale the edges, watch what happens in the viewer when I scale these out uniformly. See how I'm creating space for the side of the pulley? And if I zoom in, you can actually see it. That gap right here, this is the sidewall. And I mean, you can obviously kind of look at it and might maybe hit 3 key, so it's a little smoother looking. You can kind of eyeball it, like right there. It's a little slow right now because I'm recording it and I'm doing a GoToMeeting. When you do it, it'll be a lot faster. Looks pretty good, right? And we basically did the same thing, the unfold tool, but we're just doing it ourselves instead of relying on that guy. Because this I know will work. The unfold tool is a gamble. It's like a 50-50 shot. Maybe it's going to work, maybe it won't. This is foolproof. It takes a little longer, but it's not that difficult. So let's just kind of do that one more time for this little lip right here, because this is also stretching. I know it's kind of hard to see, but that does not have any data. It's like right there in the border. And if you're ever unsure if there's any information for that, because I can't really tell, if you just start selecting faces on the side, like let me get those guys, hit F. I mean, just look at what's lighting up. That thin line is the side. Not this, like the line. That's the side. So there's nothing there. So let's do the same concept we just did before. Let's go back to 1. Just turn that off for a second. So the side stretching. Remember how before I was trying to select all the edges below where it was stretching? So if this is now the problem, what's below it? This one tiny edge, because right below that's where I cut it. So like this is the last edge on the list. That little guy right there in the bevel, shift right click, oh sorry, over here, or it's not shift right click, command right click, edge ring utilities, to edge ring. Now I have that little guy going around the whole model. So it's now everywhere. Can't really see that because it's so tiny, but it's the same thing. Once you do that, hold R, and I'm going to scale it. Now this is obviously a much smaller piece, so you don't have to go crazy. You don't need to do this. Like, yes, you scaled it out. You made a terrible decision. We overshot that a little bit, but it's a small chunk. Maybe just go out. That's probably even too much there. Maybe like that. You can tell that looks pretty good. Hit 3. Here we go. Well, I'll show you a trick too. So you know how I want to see that checker, and you know how when you click on an object, all the wireframe is lighting up, and that might be annoying to you. Like, how can I just get the checker to show up without me seeing the wireframe? You can actually do that. If you ever want to turn off your selection highlighting, if you go to Show, down here you can say Turn Off Selection Highlighting, and now when you click on it, you can see the UVs or that checker pattern without actually having the wireframe light up. So it's a little easier to kind of understand what's happening. But you can tell like that whole top part looks really good. It's not scaled, properly compared to this guy because the tiles are bigger, but like by itself, like that does look really nice. So that's the top. That's the hardest part of the whole project, is that guy. And you even saw now, like that's not really that difficult once you kind of know what to do. And I'd say for you guys, I know this looks fun. Well, fun for me because I like UVing, but just try the unfold. It's obviously way easier. If it works, great, move on. If you don't like the unfold tool, it does something weird, at least now you kind of know there's a plan B. So we've kind of hit on all the tricky areas for the pulley. Doing pretty well here. Do you guys have any other questions about the pulley? I think you guys are going to do pretty well with this one. Okay. Excellent. So I still have about like an hour kind of blocked out. I typically go, like 2 hours. Do you guys want me to get into any of the texturing? Okay. Cool. Well, let's do that. Let's do some Photoshop. Yeah, I mean, if you guys want it, I'm totally down for that. It's easier for me too. I mean, it's better for me because obviously when we start answering these questions right here in the meeting, it just means you guys are going to be able to start this thing and have way less complications. So it's better all around. All right, let me just get a new scene here. I kind of want to get rid of all that, and I want to bring in my pulley because I'm almost like skipping ahead a little bit to the end where my UVs are done. So let me just bring in my finished one. So this is the same one I used in my example. Now in the example UVs, again, you can see that they're smoother because when I saved it, the only difference is I saved it with the 3 key turned on, just so it looks a little bit better. I'd probably recommend you do that. So when you save it out, hit 3. It's just going to make your life a lot easier in Photoshop because lining up textures with a kind of a hard-edged 1 key where it's very angular, and the photo, obviously, the pulley really is circular or cylindrical shaped. That 3 key makes it much, much easier to line it up because you can actually tell the true position of the UVs, not this weird faceted looking, shape. So we'll keep it in 3 mode. We'll come back to this guy. I'm just kind of leaving this open to Maya because I might want to close out of Maya. I'll come back to this later. I do want to go into Maya and look at it on the model. And when you do this stuff, don't wait until the way end to test it out. Like, we're going to load it in Maya. We want to look at it and make sure when we're done with a good section that it looks right when you see it in 3D. Because if it doesn't, we can kind of back up and fix it. So it is really important to view your texture every so often just to make sure it's working. And Photoshop should be pretty easy. Like, as far as teaching it, it's just that, like, this when I have like online students and campus students come to my class, you guys are all coming to me with like huge ranges of experience with Photoshop. So I'm just kind of curious, like in this group, between the three of you, have you used Photoshop like prior to Full Sail? Yeah, no worry, Aaron. I know you're kind of double deucing with the other class as well, so you can take off whenever you need. Yeah, so you use it in high school. I mean, when I went through high school, I definitely didn't have it. I think I was like doing speed typing classes. That was thrilling. Yeah, and so Lucas, you didn't use it prior. Yeah, so again, you can kind of see it like even between us, like, you've used it, Megan. The rest of us did not use Photoshop. I used it a little bit before I came to Full Sail, just because I was doing like web development and graphic design. Wasn't very good at it. Uh, I used it in '94. Well, you got me beat. I did not use it in '94. I think I started using it probably right around like 98, 99 maybe. And I barely knew what I was doing. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I used it when it was like black and white. And it was like if you knew how to use the free transform tool, you were like on the cutting edge. um, but Photoshop, again, I want you guys to really feel comfortable with it because it really is a simple software. I think people get overwhelmed with it a little bit, just navigating. But you have to kind of remember that everything we're doing in Photoshop is pretty straightforward. We're not matte painting. We're not turning into Bob Ross and hand painting all this stuff from scratch. I'm not expecting you guys to be amazing traditional artists. What we're doing is producing a believable photorealistic texture, right? So we're using photos, meaning we don't have to probably hand paint almost anything. The hard part for us is just loading in the UV map, taking the photo, and understanding how to line it up in the right spot for all the pieces, and then, of course, blending all the different pieces together so it looks good. Now, let me show you what my final looks like before we make anything. So this is, I'll do the pulley probably because at least we just saw me UVing it, so it kind of makes sense. But you will be doing this on the scraper as well. And obviously there's a watermark there, which means do not copy off my texture. We had a few people do that. That did not go well. But back here, this is what my final looks like. This is all photo based and just blending them together. So if you guys kind of watch through my Photoshop playlist with this one, you're gonna learn so many cool tricks with layering and masking. And masking is really the big one. So let's try this out. I'm gonna load in my UV snapshot. Now obviously when you guys do it, UVs, not mine. So I'm bringing in the UVs, okay? And let's go over here. We're going to find our reference images, and there's a couple zip files on FSO. Just go to the bottom of the activity, download them, and you're going to end up with a folder that's a bunch of this stuff. And I'm giving you guys way more than you'll probably actually need, but like pulley bottom 1, bottom 2, or I'm just turning it like 180 degrees. Okay, there's the inside. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but you get the idea. There's just a bunch of different photos from different angles. I'm going to just grab a couple right now, but use as much of this as possible so we have some variety. For us, though, since we only have about an hour, we'll do just maybe one top photo, one of the outside. We'll skip the bottom, but let's do the inside as well. And we're just going to open those up in Photoshop. Okay, so these guys are all open. Let me kind of back up here because I want to swap back to this setup. There we go. Yeah, so we're going to be doing this on multiple layers. We're not really painting, we're not really hand painting it. We're basically going to be sort of copying and pasting the reference images into that UV image and then moving it in the right spot. So I'll kind of show you how we do this in just a second here. Now, one thing to kind of clarify is I'm using this kind of multi-tab setup. This is your standard screen mode. My issue with this, if you hit space and I try to left click, I can't pan anywhere in the canvas. Or I do that. Oops. If you go to full screen mode with menu bar, if you hold space and the little hand tool pops up, I can now click and move around the canvas. This is really important to me because sometimes I need to get to something that's just out of view and like pull it in. Like a free transform, one of your controllers might be off the side, and this allows you to get to something. And you can, I use hotkeys for zooming in and out. You could do Command, minus, and plus, which most people do. I usually prefer doing Alt space left click or Command space left click. And the reason I prefer doing Alt or Command with the space bar and clicking is because when you do it this way, you never have to take your hand off the mouse. But if you think about Command plus and minus, every time we do Command plus and minus, I'm like moving my hand from the mouse to the keyboard just to hit those two buttons. So I usually prefer Alt space click and Command space click. Anyway, let's go get this going here so we can get some stuff done. All right, so I'm back on this guy. Here's my UV image. You can tell it's a locked background, one layer. Double click, which brings up the rename new layer button. We're going to call this UV or UV layer, but this is our UV layer we're going to use. So this will be above all the textures that we create, which are going to be below it, obviously. Let's go to our top photo. Doesn't really matter which one you start with, but we'll maybe start with the top. And I just want to copy the entire image and just paste that into the other file. So to do this, I want to select everything first. So Command A, select all, Command C to copy, and then Command D to deselect. And so it's basically just Command ACD. So just 3 hotkeys in a row. But when you do Command ACD, the deselection part is really important. And if you guys have really ever used Photoshop to some extent, when you forget to deselect something, that will turn into like a world of pain later because Photoshop does a bunch of things really differently when a selection is still running. You're going to start making alpha channels and masks and clipping masks. You'll be painting in the wrong area. Like everything with Photoshop is different if there's still a selection running. So don't forget to deselect when you're done copying something. So if I go back to this guy, which I could go through Window and scroll down and find it, that's a lot of work, right? Moving up, go into here and clicking. So if you want to get through the different images faster, instead of going to Window, if you do Control Tab cycles through all your open files. And another one that's kind of nice, if you do Alt Tab, this will hide all of your menus, which is kind of cool because sometimes you just want to like remove the clutter and just look at something and see if the composition feels good. I do this a lot whenever I'm doing like matte paintings. So like when I was doing this little personal project, where are you at? Like this thing. So when I was painting this, every so often I would kind of do my Alt Tab just to remove all the other menus so I could kind of get a better feel for like the way I'm constructing the shot. All right. Thank you. All right. So we got that thing still copied. Let's paste it. Command V. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, apparently I did not copy it. I think in my process of deselecting it, I lost my copy. Let's do that again. There we go. So it should paste, and you'll notice it goes on above the UVs. So how do we get the UVs and this to play together? Because you can see right now, I can't even see the UVs, so I have no idea where to position this thing at all. And I really don't want to be fading out opacity. Because, I mean, it works as like, like in a pinch if you have to, but The problem with opacity is when you start fading things out, yes, I could move it in the right spot, but now you're leaving this as a potential problem where you might forget you did this and you have all these layers that are partially faded and they just never look right, like because they're all blending together real weird. So this is not really the way you want to do it. What I want you guys to do instead is just drag the UV layer so it's above your texture. We're just flipping the layer order, okay? And on this layer, if you change the blend mode to add, watch what happens to the canvas. Add on the UV layer. You'll notice when you do an add, the black part of that layer acts like it's transparent, but the white wires show up. And this is really, really helpful because now I can basically leave the UV layer on as much as I want, and I can just freely move this other layer behind it and line it up in exactly the right spot. And if you, there are other ones you could maybe do if you have it set to, let's see here, people like to use multiply. If you do multiply, it doesn't look good, but if you had an inverted map, like let's say you had a black wireframe with a white background, if this is what you're using and you put that to multiply, this one also works. This just makes it so it's like black wires against your texture. Both are really fine. It just kind of depends what you're looking at, and you can kind of make the decision if you prefer white wires or black wires. I typically do the white though. Oh, I didn't even notice I literally just talked about multiply right when you asked it. Yeah, screen works too. Yeah, totally. Screen is very, very similar to add. So if I do screen, you can see it's a slightly more faded version, which you might prefer, and that's totally fine as well. So that's up to you guys. Play around with it. See which blend mode you like. But as far as grading, I don't personally care. But just pick the one you think helps you out the most. Okay, so maybe I'll stick with add for this one. So this layer right here is going to be the first photo for the top part of the pulley. So I'm going to name that pulley top 1, my first image for the top. Now I want to move this in the right spot. So I'm on that layer, Command T, which remember is our shortcut for free transform tool. Command T. Let me back up. I'm going to center it. Now here's a kind of a common, not mistake, but a common thing that people kind of do incorrectly with the transform tool. I know everyone knows you grab a corner and you can squash and stretch it, and then someone tells you you don't want to do that, right? Because you're distorting the original image. We want to keep it the same proportions. So at some point, someone told you to use Shift. And you've probably done this where you hold Shift, click in a corner, and you can see when I do that, it doesn't matter how I move my mouse, it always maintains the same proportions. And I'm sure you've all done that. Shift click in the corner, it scales down. But what's the problem doing it that way? You'll notice as I shift click, it's drifting away from where we had it centered. So if you shift click, you're now moving it back. Shift click, moving it back. It's like this constant battle of just like moving it around and shift clicking until it's in the right spot. So let's do this a different way. If you still do the transform tool, you'll notice in the middle there's a pivot point. People usually move this by mistake when you're trying to move the image and they click on this guy. Just kind of leave that in the center. It should snap. Get it centered right there so the crosshair's in the middle. Instead of doing shift, just add alt or option to your hotkey. So alt shift, click and watch this. This scales to the pivot point, which is currently in the middle. And now I don't have to move it nearly as much as I did before. I can zoom in. Okay. And I want to think about where this should be positioned. Now we know we have these little threaded pieces. Okay, those clearly go there. So I have a rotation issue. Let's spin it. Okay, it looks good right like that. Not bad. Now, how do I know where to line it up? Because you can tell it's kind of in the right spot, but remember, we're really striving for accuracy. So this is where it gets a little tricky. Let me turn this off for a second. Actually, let me hit Enter and just hide this layer for just a minute. Okay. when you're looking at the UVs, you have to understand where your key points are for the photo to line up. Because this just looks like a bunch of circular edge loops, right? How do we know what we're really trying to do here? So when you look at the photo, remember that these photos kind of have all these bevels on the corner. So go into Maya, select the edges on all the corners of that top, just so you know where your 90-degree angles are. And once you do that, come back in here. I'd make a new layer. I'm just going to call this something like marker layer. And I'm just using it just for a little guide. I'm not really going to keep this on for the final, but if you make a new empty layer somewhere near the top, pick some really obnoxious color, like we'll do bright pink. I'm going to go to my brush. Okay. Right click just to bring the size down a little bit. Zoom in. And that is the corner on the inside, right? Let's just paint a line there. This edge right here, I can't go into Maya right now just for the sake of my computer. It'll probably burst into flames if I do it. But if I could go back into Maya at the same time, this corner is the other corner for the top. That guy right there is the corner right where it goes down the side and it begins to flatten out on that next plateau. And just because I've done this a bit, I know this area right there is the far outside corner. And then that is that last edge down the way far outside. This is actually where I cut it earlier, where I did that last scaling trick on the top to kind of fix the stretching. That's that guy. On this other little section right here, which I didn't do with you guys, this is the underside of the top. I just kind of kept mine going. Yours may not necessarily look like that. But basically, I'm just marking where my corners are. So that means when I'm looking at this guy, I know that this whole rusted part right here should sit perfectly between those two edges right there. So let's try it out. Oh, not that guy. Texture layer, Command T. Now from here, I'm not really going to use the Shift Alt scale thing. It doesn't matter. Just go in there, look at your thing. That's in the right spot. Actually, just by luck, I didn't even mean to do that. But that's in the right spot. I'm just going to follow my eye around it. It's a little off over here. So let's take that in right there. Okay, not quite there. So let's scale that down just a little. I think you guys can kind of see what I'm doing though. Basically just nudging in the sides until it looks like that hits the right edge. All the way around the pulley. Yeah, that looks better. I mean, you can tell, like, if you do it right, I mean, it really is going to be almost like a perfect fit. All right, so that's in the right spot. Threading looks perfect. We got that guy exactly where we want. Done. Yeah, exactly. It's totally just making sure it fits right between the lines. So it's kind of is nice because if you guys end up doing really well with the UVs, I think you're going to find just getting into Photoshop goes way smoother than you expected because things just line up like they're supposed to. It's almost like the model is based on the reference. Almost. So there's the top. Now, what is this next section? This is the side of the pulley. So I can see it in the reference. So if I go back to this image, basically what we're talking about now is this right here. That's the side. Now this is our reference for the side. And you can probably imagine already this is going to be a problem, right? Because I have a side photo, which is not even the entire side. This may be not even half of it. And the way we UV'd it, we left that side as a circle, which is good. But we sort of have a conflict now trying to get that image to line up in the right spot. But you guys can still see what it's supposed to look like. It is just, whoops. It's just a lot of blue paint, a little bit of rust. Let's see what we've already got. It's already filled with blue paint and rust. I'm going to say we call that a day and not even worry about it. So we're going to say we're good. Let's get to the next spot. This giant patch right here, this we do know what it's supposed to be. This is the next giant flat spot. Now I know I've already used that in the same image, so I don't want to modify the previous layer we just did. Let's copy this again and just try to get now the blue part lined up. So Command A, Command C, Command D. Control Tab back. I'm going to paste it. Now when you paste, watch your layers. Notice how it pastes above whatever layer you're currently on. Immediately rename it. Pulley top 2. And I know it's covering the other image. Do not worry about that. Focus strictly on just getting this one texture in the right spot. Okay, so I can Command T, kind of center it roughly, and then we'll do our little Alt-Shift scale trick we just did earlier. And it's going to be right around there. See how close we got. Oh, that's real close. And again, like before, you'll notice it will fit just like it's supposed to. I'm just kind of like scanning across this, making sure it is doing the right edge loop. Right here, you can see it looks a little weird. That's actually a piece of the fabric kind of bleeding over the pulley from when I took the photo. Don't worry about that, but everything else looks okay. Okay, over here there's a problem. That needs to go in just a little. Let's go up, almost there. Bring that in, like that. I think we're good. Might come in just a little bit on that, but we're pretty much exactly where we need to be. Again, you don't have to like nitpick too much, but try to get pretty close. I think that looks good. All right, so I think we're in a good spot with that. Hit enter. Now, this is where we hit our first major problem. Let me turn off the markers for a second. So we've got 2 layers that are stacking together. I've got this top layer sitting above the bottom layer, okay? And it's kind of covering all the work that we just did. Okay, so I'm going to open this up. Now, how do we get this to work? It basically means on the top layer that we just did, we need to remove part of this so it's not covering the entire image below it. Now, this can be a little confusing for some people, but what you want to do is think about, all right, on this layer on the top, what did we really need from it? We only really needed this part right here, right? We weren't trying to do anything with this. We've already done this rusted section before. That's the one below it. So I know what I want to keep. So really what I need to do is I almost want to do like a circular hole, like a cutout to remove this whole inner piece altogether. So let's try it out. I have an elliptical marquee tool I can use. So if I just click, I can just drag anywhere. It's not even close to being accurate. Not a big deal. But once you kind of drag it down, go to select, and then go to transform selection. And you can see I'm now basically free transforming my selection of the marquee. I'm going to bring it in right outside of that rusted piece. Okay, that looks pretty good. Bring this up, move that right about there. And that looks pretty good. Hit enter. So I've modified my selection to basically show me what I don't want. Now, I could hit delete and this would work, but one of the big things you're going to see me talk about a lot over the next 20 minutes or so, and in my videos, is I use masking as much as possible. And the reason I'm going to be hitting on masking quite a bit is because once you kind of get comfortable with how masks work, you can basically start hiding and removing your layers without permanently damaging anything. Because it's all like a black and white alpha. And so really, even if you mess up the black and white alpha, you can just redo it or paint on it with other black and white colors to fix it. So I'll kind of show you what I mean. So I've got a selection of a thing I want to remove. I'm on my top layer. I'm going to hit the mask button at the bottom, add layer mask. Now when I do it, you're going to notice a couple weird things happen. Click, something has happened on the layer. This is the mask. It's connected to the color of the layer, okay? And you can tell in the viewer, this doesn't look right. So whatever we just did is wrong. Now, how do we know what just happened? Turn off all your layers. You're only looking at the one layer, and this will explain or kind of help you understand what is wrong or right. Notice how it converted my selection to that little circular white shape. that just happens when you hit mask and you have a selection active. So Photoshop did that, and it kept what I selected. This is what I wanted to remove. Right. So what Megan's saying is we could then invert the selection, which I can do. You can invert selections right there. But couldn't I also just invert the black and white color? So if I click on the mask and do Command-I to invert, see how flipping it is essentially flipping the effect of that alpha? And so now the inner part is being removed. It's keeping the outside part. And if you ever want to see the mask, because I know we're just looking at a little preview here, if you want to see that up close, if you go to Channels, turn on the visibility, and turn off color, you can see exactly what it looks like. But that's basically what it did. And watch what happens when I turn on the layer beneath it. So it's almost like we're building these like circular rings of the texture from the center to the outside. And that's already like 2/3 of the top done. And that really wasn't too difficult. Now, I'll show you a couple other cool reasons why we're doing this. So on the mask, if I click on it and go to channels and kind of look at this again, you can see how it's a really sharp line. Okay, and then if you really zoom in and you kind of nitpick this a little bit, you can see how that is making a fairly harsh edge right there. It doesn't look too good, and especially it looks worse when you get over here because you can see one of the photos is darker because of like a shadow from the lighting when I took the photo. So one thing we can do to kind of hide that, since we do have a little bit of blue paint underneath, I could then start blurring or painting like blacks and grays on the alpha to blend that a little bit better. So basically, instead of this being like a harsh black and white, if I kind of fade this a bit and kind of smudge it or blur it so it's more of like a gradient, that will begin to hide the texture seam. So if I go to the mask, I'm going to go to black, and I can flip my colors by hitting X, but I want to go to black, B for brush. I'm going to keep my flow down, so the flow is going to be not too touchy. And we're now going to paint over here. Okay, so I want to paint on the mask. So watch what happens when I start doing that. See how it's looking kind of like it's erasing it. Okay, bring the size up, make this a little faster. I'm just going to really kind of quickly tap and paint black on the mask. Okay, and then we kind of back up. And you can see just by doing this little like kind of fuzzy kind of brush of black paint, that's made a huge difference on like how those areas blend together just by softening that a little bit. Now, obviously, when you kind of get into the shadow area, me blurring this is not really going to make that any better. I mean, I'll show you what it's going to look like. We'll paint more black. I mean, it's kind of blending it. It's okay. But eventually, I am going to get to the point where this is actually getting worse because now I'm introducing a weird highlight that shouldn't be there. So we've definitely got a problem. We'll just kind of back up. But you can use this for about maybe half, probably about half of that pulley. We just have an issue when we get to this one little patch with a shadow. But we can fix this pretty easily. So I'm just going to kind of skip ahead a little bit. We'll just pretend like we've done this last section. It's just repeating this one more time. Use that top photo, maybe rotate it so it doesn't line up in the same spot. And then you can kind of put that here, and you just do the same mask, kind of circular cutout effect. Now, what we're going to do over here is try to fix the shadow issue we're kind of seeing here. So how to fix the shadow is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm going to try to brighten this part of the texture so it has about the same intensity as the two pieces next to it. Okay, so to fix this, I'm going to make a levels or like a brightness, but I don't want to do it through the section up here because these are permanent adjustments. And if you want to do it, it's permanent unless you start going back through history. So instead, we're going to do a color adjustment layer, which is down here, this little fill, kind of right next to the mask button. Click on it, and we're going to pick, we'll do levels. I think most people know levels. Okay, click on that. Go to layers. You can see it sitting above it. Now let me kind of back up. I'll show you what this looks like. Okay, got levels. If I double click on the little icon for the tool to pop up, I can start moving things around and make things brighter. This is gamma in the middle. This is black point. I mean, you can slide things around and kind of change the texture, but it's not really ever going to work because you're basically affecting the entire Photoshop document. Okay, so what we need to do is make sure we're only affecting the layer that has the problem. So to do that, I need to link this to the layer directly beneath it. Okay, so we're going to hold Alt. I'm just going to click between the layers. You can see when I Alt click, it's linking it to what's beneath it. So now if I do the same thing, it's only doing that guy. So we're getting closer. Now what I'm going to do is try to lighten this just so that area matches the piece next to it. I'm just going to zoom in really close. Now to lighten this up, I could probably do this a couple ways. The best is most likely going to be white point, which is the one on the right side at the top. That's technically brightness. Gamma will kind of do it, but it sort of washes things out and it loses the color a little bit. But either way, you can play around with them. Just get it close. Like that is probably fine. That looks okay. Now, even though this looks fine here, look at what happens when I back up. See how it's now broken in other pieces? Because again, we're brightening the whole layer up. Okay, so this means over here, we now need to tell this to only affect where the shadow is. Now, this is going to be pretty easy because if you look at what's next to the little controller for the levels, look what we've got, a mask. And remember that the mask, it works just like this guy. It wants white and black to tell it where it should be affecting something. Now, white, which is the default, means it's affecting everything. So I'm going to click on it and do Command-I to invert it. Okay, so that looks like it's turning it off, but don't panic. Now I'm going to paint white where I want it to affect it. So I'm going to go to Brush, White. I have my flow down. So I'm just basically painting like a really soft white color, kind of like I did earlier with the mask when I was painting black. I'm now painting white. And look what happens. Let me make that a little bigger. I'm painting brightness. If you haven't seen this before, this probably looks like some weird magic, but this is how you're supposed to use masking in Photoshop. So I'm basically painting where I want it to affect it. Just kind of lightly tapping, walking around some of the trouble areas and getting it close, like that. And I'm not saying it's perfect, like that still doesn't quite feel right, but go back to the tool, load it up. Let's make that a little brighter. You can see I'm now able to even change the brightness after the fact. So maybe I'll get it a little closer, like that. And over here, you'll notice how when I made that, I fixed that. This got a little too bright. It's kind of a good example, actually. Like, darn, I got this set, now I'm kind of not happy about that. You have to remember, it's only because I painted white there. So how do I remove it? Paint black. So switch to black, go back, and just paint, and now I'm kind of removing that. Now, I might have to lower my flow because it's a little touchy with how harsh it's painting black and white, but I think you guys get the idea. And now, because the values are closer, I have a feeling if I went back to this guy and kept painting that soft black brush to kind of blend the layers together, this would probably work a lot better. But if I kind of back up from a distance, look how much of a difference this makes just by fixing the shadow. See how like this looks almost like the pulley's broken, like there's a weird indent and part of it's like sunk lower. This is just enough to hide the issue where it's not going to look out of place in the render. that make sense for you guys? Like just kind of watching me do it? I know you might have a few hiccups when you try it yourself, but it's really not too difficult. All right, let's go back. So next up, we got this thing taken care of. I got the shadow. I do have a video where I talk about the highlight, which is a little more complicated. Well, a lot more complicated. I'm gonna let you guys watch that, and just if you want to try it, just go step by step. But just for the sake of time, I'm gonna kind of skip over the highlight right now. I want to jump ahead to another really important part about this. You'll notice that if I turn the UVs off, because eventually we do want to have these turned off. I don't want the UVs in the texture. But if we disable it and kind of think about what this is going to look like when we start saving it out, you'll notice that this document is starting to look kind of messy. Because I got like fabric showing up. They're crisscrossing behind each other. It's just not really clean looking, even though it might look totally fine in Maya. So there's a really cool thing we can do to clean up all the empty space around the shells. And I typically do this like at the way beginning. I'm kind of skipping this and going out of order just so you can kind of understand why we're doing it. But what we want to do is basically fill all the dead space with just a flat color, almost to make like a stencil and clean this whole thing up. So what I'm going to do is go to my UV layer, go to the wand, which is like a color selection tool, click on the area outside of the UVs where it's black. Notice I'm getting a selection of all the black color outside the UVs. I need to get these little holes right here. Shift click, go down, shift click in the little gap, and we zoom in. Notice how the selection's right up to the edge. I want to just offset that a little bit, so when I put a color over here, I don't want it to be so close to the UVs where I'm worried about that color bleeding into my texture. So I'm going to go to Select, Modify, Contract, 5 pixels, hit OK, and you'll notice we've now created a little bit of a 5 pixel buffer, so I'm not going to have any weird, texture bleeding issues. There's my selection. I'm going to go right below the UV layer, make a new layer. We're going to call this mask layer or stencil layer, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really matter. And with the selection running on this new empty layer, I'm going to hit the mask button. And just like before, you'll notice how it converts that selection to an alpha or a mask. This is what it looks like. Now, why did we do that? Because you can see it doesn't appear like it's doing anything when I turn the layer on and off. As soon as you paint something in the color, you'll understand why we're doing it. I'm going to do like just 50% gray, like mid-tone gray. I'm going to go to my paint bucket, click anywhere in the canvas while you're on the color part of the layer, and look what we get. It's basically just like putting a gray fill layer on everything, but it's only visible in that selected part that we did with the mask. And I kind of like this because not only is it just useful to make the texture more presentable, like if you want to show this off on your portfolio, but it's also really nice because now I can sort of visually understand where I may be missing texture information. Like I can kind of see the gaps I haven't got to yet. Now there is one kind of small issue with this thing. Even though it's working, you'll notice that that didn't stop the layers from affecting other shells next to it. That is really easy to fix. So I'm going to take all these layers for the top. All these guys should only be interacting with this part. We're going to make a group, new layer, take all the layers I want that go with this, drag them in the group. Okay, so you can see I can now collapse it, hide the group. We'll call this pulley top group. And what are we going to do? We're going to make a mask. Shocker. So we're going to go to the polygonal lasso, and I'm just going to click around that shell. Kind of squeeze through here. And just kind of clicking and drawing this little shape that's just big enough. Here we go. Okay, and on the group, if I hit the mask button, watch what happens. It converts that to a selection, which means anything in the group will now no longer appear outside of that. So if you ever want to disable a mask, by the way, if you do shift click, that will turn it on and off. And you can kind of see what that effect is. So there we go. There is our beautiful texture so far. Now I'm not really going to probably do too much more at this point because we're almost out of time here, but obviously use the rest of the photos, line up the notches. The bottom is super easy. You just put it in the bottom and you're kind of done. The only other tricky part is this section down here in the bottom left. It is the inside wall of the pulley. That one, I do have a video that covers how to do it. It's the last video in the Photoshop playlist, but basically that section you're going to have to build from scratch. But you just need to find a few photos online like Rust and Paint, and you'll kind of see how you build that in the video. Now, I do want to save it because I kind of think you guys might want to see what it looks like back on the model. So let's say we want to test this guy out. File, I have the UVs off for now, but File, we'll do Save As. I'll save it just like we would, when we're done. Let's go to my project directory, VSD project for the go-to. Source images, we want to do a Targa, and we'll call this pulley texture test 1, save. And when this pops up, what this is asking is how many channels you have. We're doing an 8-bit image, which I don't think I can show you right now because I can't click over here, but this is an 8-bit image. So what 24 bits means is it means there's going to be 8 bits per channel. 8 in red, 8 in green, 8 in blue. Collectively, that's 24. When you do 32, you're just including an alpha channel. We don't need that. We're not doing alphas, so just leave it as 24. Hit OK, and let me just hop in Maya real quick, and hopefully my computer can handle this. Please don't crash. Got a lot of software running and a recording. You can do it, Maya. Come on. Give me 1 second. There we go. I think we're almost in. All right, good. Let's bring in that same OBJ file and we'll check it out. I'll hit 3 because I know eventually it's supposed to be in 3 mode. Now, if I want to do a material on this, I know I can go in the Hypershade. I'm not sure if you guys were taught this before, but if you do Shift-T on a model, that brings up the Create New Material thing. And I know we're doing RenderMan. Don't worry about making a RenderMan material yet because we haven't talked about that. Just pick any Maya material, like a Lambert. That's fine for now. We'll get into materials with RenderMan next week. I'm just doing this just to look at a texture in the viewer. So Lambert's good. But just put a Lambert on it. Here's my color. I mean, if I move it, you can see it's that's affecting my pulley. So color, hit the little checker button next to it to make a connection. We're going to pick a file. On that file, we're going to load in the texture I just saved. Right there. And turn on my texture button. There it is. See how nice that looks? How everything hits like exactly where you'd expect. So we haven't finished it, obviously, and there are some problems, and like that will kind of go away eventually when I do the rest of the top. But I think you guys kind of get the idea. Just previewing it, and you can tell everything we did looks awesome, minus that highlight that I didn't really get to. But you're sort of continuing that through the project. Yep. So that's it, I think, for the meeting today, guys. Hopefully this was kind of helpful. But I kind of want you guys to get excited about this stuff. I know, and I get UVing is not exciting. No one really loves it, maybe except for me. But the Photoshop stuff is kind of fun because everyone likes making nice colors and textures. And you can imagine, like, if you get these photos to look really good for the final texture, just think about what that's going to mean back in Maya. It means before you even hit render, you know you're starting with a photorealistic texture because you built it from photos. So this is probably the best way to approach most of the projects you guys work on. All right. Well, if you guys, do you guys have any questions before we kind of call the meeting? Cool. Well, thanks for hanging out, guys. I'm just happy the recording didn't crash this week. So once that we're kind of done, I'll save the recording out, and I should be able to upload this tomorrow morning when I'm back, when I kind of get a good connection. And I'll send you guys the link sometime like tomorrow morning or midday. All right. Well, that's it. I will probably catch up with you guys later in the week. Have a good night.